Welcome, movie lovers, to Popcorn Talks Anatomy of Movie as we dissect Steven Soderbergh's return to film with, of course, Logan Lucky. So stay tuned as we dissect the 10 rules of making a great heist.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk, we talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Anatomy of a Movie.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Take that country road, take it home.
John Denver, sing to me.
This was a great motif in this amazing movie, Logan Lucky. We have, of course, Marisa Serafini.
Hello, everyone.
My name is Phil Svitek. Missing from action today is Dimitri Panos.
Yes. He unfortunately could not do this.
He could not, although he did want to. So him and I might do like a 10-minute bonus episode to get his thoughts, which will be just me introducing him and him just talking.
Yeah, I was like, it might be 20 minutes.
Nevertheless, if you're joining us for the very first time, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. We appreciate you either way. Know that we are very spoiler-filled, so we assume that you've seen the movie, so if you haven't, you've been forewarned. Also note that as we dissect the movie, both in terms of storyline and production, you guys can follow our notes in there's a link in the description box, so that way you get to follow along, because we sort of talk about these things, but we might not hit on every single one of them because we don't want to be just reading notes and facts verbatim. But as we always do, let us start with the beginning with overall quick thoughts.
Overall, I generally liked this movie. I was always a big fan of the Ocean's movies, and I'm a big fan of the actors and the cast that's in this film. So I was like actually really excited to watch it. And then while I'm watching it unfold, not really knowing it was Steven Soderbergh, going into it, I was like, it's just another fun film. And it had all the exact same beats as Ocean 11. I'm like, okay, I understand. And we'll get to it, the reveal at the end was very Ocean's 11 / Contraband-y. But I enjoyed it. It was fun. There was humor. Instead of Ocean's 11, it was hillbillies and NASCAR. Overall, visually it was funny. I think that the character diversity really played it up a bit, and I liked that the women were very strong and they played their pivotal roles in this film. Overall, I did enjoy this film.
I enjoyed this film a lot too. It was I didn't really know going into it what it would be. It's kind of seemed comedic, and then it just took me by a pleasant surprise. First I'm watching it, and I knew that I had a high rating from critics, and maybe the first 15 minutes I'm like, really? What did people see in this? And then it just kept unfolding and unfolding, and it was just fantastic. It really took its time. It had that southern slow pace to it. In all situations, even when they're in the midst of what should be otherwise very stressful, they had their southern charm and hospitality. So I enjoyed it. And original characters, the fact that I'm getting lessons in science from a guy named Joe Bang.
Right.
And he's explaining it. It just worked on so many levels. I had a blast with it. I do recommend it to anybody, and it's a shame that unfortunately it's not hitting the box office in the way that it was intended, which we'll talk about sort of that avenue because that's a whole separate discussion point. But I had fun with it. That's recommend it to anyone.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun film. I think the one thing that I had to initially really get over and then, suspend my disbelief that this could all happen was I truly didn't think that our two protagonists of the film, they're in this, I don't mean for this to sound terrible, but I didn't believe that their intelligence level can pull something off as grand as this heist was. So I had to get over the fact that, okay, maybe they are smarter than their character development was for the audience was led to believe. And I just had to get over that. I'm like, I'm not sure if these guys could actually pull that off.
I did, because to me, we didn't have to see everything laid out in terms of the plan. But they were so meticulous, they would literally talk about sort of everything and break it down. And so I do believe that they kind of thought of everything. And they just had that calmness, when they get back into Mellie's car, Smelly, which I thought was a funny joke from Joe. But nonetheless, just the way Adam Driver's character says to her, like, yeah, there was some complications at the end. Anyone else would have sort of been freaking out, but he just nonchalantly goes with it. So I think definitely more credit needs to be given than perhaps we were led on beginning.
Right, and I think that's why the story and movie works, because it does work, but you wouldn't expect these guys to actually pull off something like that. And then once they do, you're like, oh, crap. So I think that's what added and is actually beneficial to their characters.
And the thing that was a nice added touch, I'll call it the Little Miss Sunshine edition of having the little girl, right? Because she, at first we're kind of introduced to her, and she knows all her tools. Mm-hmm. She's like Flathead or Phillips, or and all these things, and so, I appreciate that. Yet she had the duality of obviously being in the pageant system and going along with that. I thought that was a very nice touch that, with the Ocean's movies and any really other heist movies never had, to my knowledge.
Yeah, I completely agree. I did like the little girl because it did bring the unrealistic aspect of the film back and it grounded it, I feel like, in that family aspect that you find more in the South. And I mean, the rest of the country has family aspects, but I feel in the country aspect that's like what's a big key component to everyday living in the South is like that family element. And I think having our main protagonist, Channing Tatum, like, he always had to go back to his family. He always had to go back to his daughter. There was, and she also helped the timeline in their timetables with the whole schedule. So she added a lot.
Well, that's what I think the difference between even a movie as recently as Baby Driver and all these other heist movies, Oceans 11, 12, and 13, that's kind of a missing component. Like, you're obviously rooting for them, and they have their reasons. But this was such a different reason. Who's really done it for their family in this way, to this level? So I thought that just gave it an emotional weight that I've not yet seen, personally. But let's kind of quickly go back. Now, there's conflicting reports that Behind the Candelabra and Side Effect are like, which movie is the last movie that he did?
Right, because they came around the same time.
Yeah.
Year.
Which New Yorker cites the Side Effect. And then you have Entertainment Weekly citing Behind the Candelabra. From research, Soderbergh kind of cites Candelabra as the one that he was going to basically sort of not go in, well, in essence, go in retirement, or certainly a hiatus. And then this script came along to him, and he was really supposed to just more or less recommend a suitable director. And as he reads it, he falls in love with it. And, time went on, and he was still looking for a director, but none was sort of coming to mind. And so he was like, okay, well, you know what? I should be the one to direct this. And then it kind of takes off from there.
And it makes sense. I mean, he has, from all the other Ocean's films, and I know I'm going to keep saying the Ocean's films, but he knows this genre. He knows how to successfully pull off heists in films and show it, film it, edit it, all that fun stuff. So this is totally in his wheelhouse, and I'm glad that he jumped at the opportunity knowing that he can do this. He's one of the best at pulling this off. So good for him.
Absolutely. And we should definitely talk about Rebecca Blount, who wrote the movie. Now, there's a huge asterisk when I say she wrote the movie.
There's a lot of question marks / asterisks. Multiple sources actually tell that. Hollywood Reporter says that Rebecca Blount does not exist. That there's like conflicting arguments that one knowledgeable source says that either Soderbergh's wife Jules Asner wrote it, and another source says that Soderbergh wrote the script himself. But the cast members and the crew members who worked on this project, they said that they were in correspondence with a person in the UK under the name of Rebecca Blount. But there's no stories that they actually met Rebecca Blount in person. So we don't know if Rebecca Blount is actually a person, because this is considered her quote-unquote first credited title movie. But a lot of it's like, is it really Soderbergh?
Which is quite ironic. In the official press booklet, the bio reads, Rebecca Blount was raised in Logan, West Virginia, and hails from a family that worked the local coal mines for many generations. After researching on the interweb how to make the explosive device featured in the film, she was informed her TSA pre-status was permanently revoked. Logan Lucky is her first screenplay. She now makes her home in New York City. So if you live in New York, I'm not saying but let's get to the bottom of this in a friendly, non-stalker, ruining people's lives type of way. Can we just get to the truth?
Yeah. Is Rebecca Blount a real person? And we know in history, Hollywood history, that there are famous writers who actually write under a pseudonym. So it could be possible that Rebecca Blount is a person and she's now finally getting credited, or it could just be Soderbergh writing under that pseudonym.
Well, because Soderbergh himself, he edits and he shoots a lot of his stuff. So he uses this, when you talk about people, he directly uses this where he'll sometimes credit himself as Peter Andrews, or in terms of editing, Mary Ann Bernard. So it's not uncommon for him to create an alias.
Yeah, for a writer. He's all encompassing. He wears many hats. So with all these conflicting arguments, because they said, and then we get to the promotion, but like promoting, there wasn't any press kits. No media outlets actually received press kits, so they didn't know anything about Rebecca Blount. So we don't know.
Mm-hmm. Now this, because it's a movie like this, now this kind of calls into question of like, well, is it because like money's going to Rebecca and there's no taxes that need to be paid on it? Like, what's going on? I want to know.
Who knows?
I want to know. But interesting story nonetheless. So obviously we'll dive into the production aspects. Lots of fascinating stuff there. But let's spend a little bit of time talking about the story. And I figured as a quick jumping off point, let's talk about the heist movie as a genre itself. According to the Rolling Stones, 6 steps to make a successful heist movie is 1, you need a team whose members all have different personalities. 2, usually one needs to be ethnic for diversity. 3, the actual plan needs to be laid out in the coolest of possible ways. Throw in one final impossible wrinkle to the mission at the last minute. Include a killer twist, we think, when the heist is over. And let the team get away. But make them wonder if they truly did.
Those are good rules. I think those definitely fit within all the Ocean's 11 films, other heist films that I've seen. Yeah, I completely agree with those rules.
I agree too. Even a movie like Horrible Bosses 2 follows those same tropes. Yet it's kind of parodying because they're the absolutely most atrocious people. This is kind of a half parody because obviously they're not incompetent.
I love that you usually need one ethnic guy for diversity. They had that in the Oceans movies. They had the Asian guy who was small enough to get into the actual vault.
Who would constitute in this case?
I don't know, because they were all white Caucasian guys. I mean, you had Riley Keough, who was Mellie, sorry. But I'm trying to think of who the diverse person is.
I mean, Adam Driver, in some sense, kind of he has a diverse background, but obviously in the movie itself, he's supposed to be brothers. So that's as diverse as he gets. But I mean, when I say diverse, his ancestry is Dutch, German, Irish, and Scottish. So that's as diverse as he gets.
It's very diverse.
But not in the typical way we would consider diverse. But one of the when your first rule is you need a team whose members all have different personalities. That's in essence one of the first rules of script writing. Is like just by reading the dialogue, you should be able to tell the character. Mm-hmm. And I don't know about you, but I certainly got that. Every character was amazingly written and unique.
Yeah, I feel, and even the brothers of Joe Bang that they hired, they were all individual and they had their moments too. I thought everyone definitely stood out and they all had their moment to shine. That was memorable. Heck, even the prison people, the cons in the prison, like there were some of those that had memorable moments or lines. So I think everyone was completely different. You can't really like confuse one with one another, and I think it was a good cast and they well balanced each other.
Yeah, when the movie had its own devices in terms of motifs, but they really were given to specific characters. So, when you talk about the prison, so we'll start sort of simple and we'll build our way up to the bigger characters. The way they were, and timing worked out perfect with the Game of Thrones references.
Yes, that was funny.
That's what made me laugh. Of like, we want the next book.
Right, and it's entertaining because we're in the industry, so we're constantly surrounded by Game of Thrones. But I don't watch Game of Thrones, but I knew how funny this joke was because when the prisoners who don't have very limited access to any media whatsoever, when they know to a T when a certain book is supposed to be written / published, I found that inside knowledge really humorous because you wouldn't expect it from prisoners instead of.
Yeah. And the warden, I thought they played him so well of like, we don't have riots at Monroe County Jail. We don't have escapes at Monroe County Jail.
Oh, Dwight Yoakam. I thought he was great as the shitbag in the movie. There was a few of them. But the fact that he was so determined to make his prison like the best prison, and he was so in denial what was happening under his own nose, which was really funny.
But it's so believable because I've whether it's other movies or real life instances, there are those people that just won't admit, like they'll see it, but it's not good for the paperwork. It puts a bad stink on it. So it just made it hysterical, and obviously he could have so helped Hilary Swank's character.
I know.
But just pride, like that because that's what it really comes down to. It's just that pride, and it's not really the job because it's not pride in the job. It's just pride of status.
Yeah. That also happens in Orange is the New Black. The warden is a complete biatch who turns the other cheek to write things off and for tax incentives and stuff like that. So I like that that's a recurring trope, but the way that they showed it, with like juxtaposed even with the editing, that there's a riot going on, but they can't actually physically see it because they blacked the windows. I enjoy that.
And as we opened up, let's start with the girl because she kind of ties in a lot of these things. A, I thought she was a fantastic actress. B, I may mention that duality of she's a tom girl, but at the same time she has beauty. She's very smart, and that introduced us to the notion of Country Road by John Denver. And I don't know, like it was just such a feel-good moment towards the end. We're almost at the near completion of the movie when she's singing. And I don't mean this disrespectfully. Doesn't necessarily have the greatest voice.
No.
But then everyone else joins in, and though they don't have it's like when people sing Happy Birthday and it's not in tune, it's not in key, but it just makes it feel good.
It's the thought that counts. I enjoyed it because, again, it grounded Jimmy. And because at the end of all of this, you see that in the end, he was doing this heist for his family, for his girl, for them to have a better life and for him to provide for her. And it grounded his character and just shows like how good of a person he is as a person, that he's thinking of other people to take care of. And
it also created like this, the daughter didn't necessarily have too much screen time in that respect as the other people, but the weight of her was just so evident, and it was a great arc for her because, I really thought go see a fist fight if you want to see like great like moments on stage by by girls, or obviously there's Little Miss Sunshine. But when she said Rihanna's umbrella, and based on what the kids said earlier about, I don't need to repeat it.
Right.
But I was like, oh dear Lord, where are we headed?
I thought that too. I thought it was gonna be a fist fight moment where she's just gonna, go crazy on the stage. But I liked that they brought it back to a more sentimental type of moment, because it meant more to her father. Because it seems like this girl is more, yes, her mom has full custody of her, but she's obviously more attached to her father. So it shows that Jimmy cares for her and she equally cares for him.
And also, it's one of those rare moments when, we had a pretty self-contained, despite like the large number of actors, pretty self-contained cast of characters. And at that point, it just brought in the entire county. That's what made it so special. It's one thing, because we've seen it before where it's that connection, but the rest of the audience is like, okay.
Right.
Whereas this, everyone just got into it, the whole county, and it was just beautiful.
I really liked that moment, and I think there was a moment where Jimmy teared up, and there was a moment in the actual theater. I was like, oh wow, I wasn't expecting that. It was a nice surprise.
What other character besides, let's say, Joe and our two brothers stood out to you most? Whether because you like them, you dislike them, whatever the case may be.
I really enjoyed Hilary Swank. I mean, we can get into her a little bit, because I've seen the trailers that she was in it, and watching the whole film, I'm like, where is she? Is she? Because I always thought she was going to be the person like gunning for them, but she doesn't come till the third act. And honestly, she's great. I mean, she's fantastic actress, but I feel like the character was too small for the caliber that she is. Not that that's bad for her. I mean, it's great that she's getting like small roles like this too, but I'm like, I felt like she was underutilized though.
Perhaps. I mean, there's been movies that we've talked about where I felt, oh, okay, that they didn't really give her much. Yes, the role wasn't as big, screen time wise, but what she did with it and the weight of it, I thought they did. I felt like her presence was there, and you got that sense from her how frustrated she was. Like, she just couldn't get that answer. No, I mean, she's dealing with, I'll use the term, apologies, shitbags left and right.
Yep.
And that are just like lying to, and she knows it. Like, wait, especially at the end when the NASCAR guy, I'll just call him, sort of dismisses her, and she's like, well, how do you know how much money you needed for the insurance? No, it's accounting. I don't really know. It's on my area. Like, that he's lying through his teeth.
Mm-hmm. I did like that she actually had the answers. She just couldn't officially prove it. And because she says it out loud, like literally, do you expect these two guys did this during a whole heist? And I was like, yeah. That whole, dramatic irony I enjoyed from that. But I think I was kind of more upset that at the end she still didn't officially get resolved that these two were it. I mean, she knew, and she was finally there at the bar, and she still had her hunches it was them. But it wasn't like clearly fully resolved that she didn't get them for an arrest or anything.
Well, that's kind of this is sort of jumping ahead, but since it ties in, I'll just say it. They had the notion that if the movie did well, there would be a sequel. Now they weren't necessarily planning on, so the ending still works whether or not there is a sequel. But I could see it now, like it's one of those things like. Whether it's the Fast and the Furious type thing where the cop now turns and is part of the team, if you will, right. Or maybe it's the next movie's all about her trying to prove that they did this.
Still prove it. I mean, she was close. She's literally in the same bar as those two, so she's close. So I don't think that would take a whole nother film for her to know it's them two when she knows already. It's just a matter of actually making the official arrest.
Yeah, and. Speaking of characters that I thought were good, although I hated him, was the car owner, if you will.
Yeah.
Because
Seth Macfarlane. Yeah.
out of all people, he was the one. By the way, I didn't recognize him at all.
Max Chilblain. Oh, I totally recognize him. How did you not recognize
There were so many. I give credit to all the actors because they played it so perfectly, and then just with the hair that he had, I couldn't tell that was Seth MacFarlane until I did the research and I see Seth MacFarlane on the bill of actors, and I'm like, huh?
Oh, I'm surprised. Yeah, I mean, you love him. I was, when he first came on screen, I'm like, oh no, here we go. Because I just know, I mean, granted, Seth MacFarlane, very successful. So, like, this is not a knock to him. But the characters he tends to play are, like, the a-holes. And watching him, I remember having this idea. I'm like, no, what are you doing? I was like, I couldn't trust his character at all. He was already set up to be dislikable. I'm glad that they kind of, in a way, made him a scapegoat in some aspects. But his character had it coming, too. It was just so frustrating to watch him.
Yeah. Well, that's why, it just played so well when he's the one who's trying to help out Hilary Swank's character, and yet, she can't believe him because the driver lied to them about seeing, obviously, Adam Driver's character. And so that's the irony, is like, out of all people, he's the one trying to tell the truth, and yet no one believes him.
Yeah.
So it made it great.
If he was a nicer, better person and he wasn't such an a-hole, someone would actually believe him. Yeah. So, again, it was more like, kind of like karma. Mm-hmm. But it's like, yeah, no one's going to believe you because you're just a terrible person anyways.
Yeah. So it worked out, and it had that great moment. Let's talk about the brothers. Not our main brothers, but the Bang brothers, if you will.
Bang brothers.
Just giving them that notion that they would only do this for a moral reason.
Yeah, I had to laugh at that.
Such a specific thing. But I've never heard of that before. Obviously, just completely out of the blue. But they, it was just, they were so steadfast about it. That's what made it believable.
I thought it was really funny because you wouldn't expect it. Again, you wouldn't expect it from guys like these. I love their argument that, hey, this grocery store has screwed over people, so yeah, we should screw them over too. And then, but then when the date changed to NASCAR, and they're like, we love NASCAR, we would never do this to NASCAR, or something along those lines.
Because NASCAR is America.
Yeah, because NASCAR is America. They're great. I thought that the whole moral joke actually came like full circle when now it affected NASCAR, and I think it made the joke hit better. We're like, we can't do this in NASCAR.
And it's so believable for those guys. Now, in terms of the Logans, when it comes to them, obviously, there's the brothers, but Mellie's sort of kind of in this because I want to get your take on the curse, right? Because when we talk about the ending, the curse kind of plays into is brought into question. Did they break the curse finally, or is the fact that she's there part of the curse and now she's going to get them? And is Mellie part of the curse, or is she like exempt from the brothers' curse?
I think she was actually exempt because all the bad stories that you hear were with Jimmy and
Clyde.
And Clyde. It was more so the brothers' stories that we were hearing and then. I mean, when we first got introduced to Mellie, she was telling like a whole driving thing that she had to go to because she was late. I don't really call that bad luck. Getting your arm blown off in war is bad luck.
Well, he also got sent there because of the brother.
Yes, but I don't think I think the bad luck was only for the brothers and not for her. Yeah. She just gets caught into their acts, but
she helps save them. Yeah. I really like the way she was written because she was written as a very strong character, and she was aware of the choices that she was making. And she, as far as the curse is concerned, I felt like she was bailing them out. Like she was the luck that they needed against their curse.
Yeah, exactly.
And just the fact that she was such a badass like driver, and
I really like that, and she, like she challenged the all the guys around her, even the stepfather. It's like, you can't drive a stick, can you? And like not really condescending, but like putting them in their place. I really enjoyed that from her.
yeah, and she did great. And she's worked with Soderbergh before. Not well, obviously Magic Mike, but Girlfriend Experience is something that he produces, so he doesn't necessarily direct or write for. But so that's how to kind of, she came into the picture, and she just played it so great.
I really liked. I'd have to say Mellie was honestly my favorite out of all of them, because she was always there helping in every situation. She didn't really like complain, but when they needed her, she was there, and she followed through with everything. She was like the most dependable out of all of them.
And she's
a woman.
She took action too. That's why, like when first Jimmy messed up the day of the week, she's explained to him like, I did this, I did that, and she was just so meticulous with the highways.
Yeah, exactly. Like, girl, you know your roads. But also, she was the driver. She was the getaway driver, which I enjoyed also, because usually that role goes to a male. But it was a female. So I love that.
And in terms of like, as far as their accents are concerned, as far as the research that we were able to pull, obviously everyone played it well, but she actually cites like whenever she would see Daniel Craig, he just was continuing to be in character, whether it was the hotel or not, and he just, what do they call it? Method acting, if you will.
Method acting, yeah. I can kind of expect it from Daniel Craig a little bit, and even Adam Driver said for his accent that it was easier for him to slip into for the West Virginia accent, because when he worked on another film, Adam Driver, when he worked on Silence, which was Martin Scorsese's film, there was like an Arab Portuguese accent to that, and he said that was actually harder than a Southern type of accent.
Yeah, he's kind of he's not necessarily from that area, but like he's got, if you will, roots from that area. So, he was able to pull from there. Channing Tatum actually born in Alabama, so, he obviously has roots in the South. So, it felt authentic in that way, the way they treated the characters. Because there's definitely instances where you're like, oh, this actor's just making fun of that accent. As opposed to like just having that accent and letting it be part of the character, and it's funny because of the character, not the accent.
You thought that?
I thought they pulled it off well.
Yeah, I thought so too. I think Southern accent is pretty easy to slip into. I'm from the Midwest, which is like really, Illinois is really conflicted with accents. We have all different types of accents just in our state alone. So I definitely understand like changing accents and that way. I thought they did great. It didn't bother me at all. I thought they definitely sounded where they came from. Not really issue, but like my personal thing was they talked so slow, and I'm a fast talker. I was like, oh no, is this the whole film? When there's that slow drawl, I'm like, I don't know if I can handle this.
I enjoyed it because it just offered a nice change of pace, both in terms of film, but also just in speech and also thought process. Right now, granted, I probably couldn't stand it in real life. There's someone we know that we work very closely with. They're like, spit it out!
Yeah, just say it.
Because here's the thing. It's not that he just speaks slow, but he also, like, he lets you in on his thought process. And so one of the things I enjoyed, I thought one of the greater scenes was the cauliflower scene. Like, if you're bringing me back into this, now you made the bacon and you made it all crispy the way I like, so I appreciate that. So, and like that was the reasoning he was gonna go off and do this.
Cauliflower. Yeah, I agree. I think once we had the characters established that they're a little bit on the like slower side, just in how they think and like how they act, and people don't really take them seriously in that sense. But once we got that established, it's like in a way, you're rooting for them because you don't think they could really pull it off either. Mm-hmm. So, kind of like the underdog story.
Indeed. And even, I will say, even Katie Holmes, I thought did a really good job. Stood her own because, with someone like Channing Tatum, right? He's sort of leaving, and the first time, and she's like, "I'm not done talking with you."
Yeah.
I thought that was a very stand her ground type of mentality. Now, granted, I obviously you could tell that there were problems in their marriage even without having to talk about them or see them. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of funny the follow up that she has. Like you could tell like she doesn't really love this guy, but he's just with the dealerships just doing so well that he's a putz, but he's good to the money wise.
Yeah, it's like she has more financial security and support in that way. I wasn't sure with the whole Bobby character with Katie Holmes because I mean I generally like Katie Holmes, but the character because they set her up, and are we set up to is she supposed to be super dislikable? Compared to the little girl should be with Jimmy, we know that, and I was kind of concerned it was going to go into another custody battle. When he's like, I'm getting my lawyer, X, Y, and Z. I'm like, oh no, I hope we don't get into that type of drama. It's like they built her character up so dislikable that we're rooting for Jimmy to have full custody. I'm glad they didn't really go into that because at the end when the little girl's performing on stage, you can tell that Bobby understood like the relationship between and how important it is from the father to the daughter. So in a way, she was likable at the end. That she was tolerable of that.
Yeah, I thought they towed that line pretty well too. And although we didn't get her quite as much, but the love interest, if you will, the nurse. I thought. Though she didn't have a lot of screen time, I thought that was a nice little touch and gave him humanity. Because too often in a movie like this, or maybe just Hollywood movies, you could see where he would have gone after and tried to get Katie Holmes back, and maybe she realizes the error of her ways, and now that he's come into this money, maybe she doesn't ask questions, but he's got money. I'm glad it wasn't that typical Hollywood storyline. I
liked it too because like I believed there. For that 2-minute scene on that whatever Winnebago that they were on the trailer, I liked it because it shows that he had respect for that I don't want to say blue collar, but like the regular hardworking person who's trying to get their feet off the ground and like start a successful business in that way. I like that he appreciated that.
So let's talk about the robbery and kind of the breakdown of it. I've been trying to look up the full list of the 10 rules. So if any of you guys get it, which I'm sure in time it'll be sort of released, or I should have just kind of jotted it down as I'm at the movie theater, but I didn't bring anything to write with. Sorry.
You were just enjoying the film.
Absolutely. So I have 7. Well, technically 8 because I remember the last one. 1, decide to rob a bank. Okay, we got that established. 2, have a plan. 3, have a backup plan. 4, establish clear communications. 5, choose your partners carefully. 6, expect the unexpected. 7, shit happens. And the last one being know when to walk away.
Yeah.
Which I thought this list was such a hilarious
Wasn't it like hang up the phone and know when to walk away or something like that?
Yeah. I really like that because just the way it was introduced of like again Adam Driver's character, like I know you made your little list and all, but too many times like I go back to what was the Morgan Freeman Michael Caine movie, Going in Style.
Oh, yeah, right? I didn't watch that one.
That's kind of a caper movie, and they had their own list, but it was such a lame list because they're trying to establish the rules of how to rob this bank. I thought that movie was not really that successful, whereas this, it's just such a simplistic list that it just worked, for them. Mm-hmm. And by the way, maybe that's the secret to life, Marissa. You think maybe they're not as smart? Maybe they just keep it simple, and that's why they're amazing.
Yeah, and I think that's why some people fail, because they overthink.
Yeah.
I liked it. It was so simple in that sense that you're like, okay, if you like bring it down to that like easy way of thinking, then yeah, maybe they can actually pull it off. And it was in like the language that they understood. Just walk away. Shit happens, you know? I mean, and I think everyone just needs to look at it in that perspective.
I agree as well. So it worked out in the end. What was your before we move on to production, what was your favorite moment of the movie, if you will?
I think the whole just the chemistry lesson, the mini chemistry lesson with
that was good.
With the bleach and sugar, and then he actually writes it on the wall, the actual chemical compounds and properties of it. And I'm like, okay, now I understand why he is the demolition guy. He's the explosives. I understood that. I thought it was just so well acted out and explained to those who didn't know. Like, how could you actually make a homemade bomb with bleach and sugar in that sense?
And also, you know, that was such a great moment too of just the fact where they're like, it's maybe 20 or 30 yards. Well, which one is it? And
dealing with science.
Absolutely. It's just it was one of those moments like, A, you're wondering like, did you guys think everything through? B, just like almost like not like an intentional disrespect for someone else's job, but just complete like, why does that matter? You know, it'd be like me asking you to do, I don't know, like build a car, and I gave you a bunch of like, what's it matter? You're just building a car. It's like, no, I need specific tools, and you asked me to do this job. So I appreciate that. I thought that worked really well.
Yeah, and you think, because usually like if going back to the Ocean's movies, you saw before they even pulled off the heist that they did practice runs, they did dry runs, they got the dimensions of the actual location that they were going to be in. They knew the size of the environment, and we didn't see that in this. I thought that they were actually getting the size of the bank vault when they went in to do the spraying and get the cockroaches out. I thought simultaneously they're getting the measurements of the room as they're going along the perimeter. And that didn't really play out to what I thought it was going to be. So I thought there was going to be dry runs where that would answer the questions, how many yards is it?
Yeah. Well, that didn't happen, but by the way, even just down to the, I'll call her the cake lady. Even she, like...
My birthday.
She walked away, you know, with something.
I like that. I felt so bad for her because she was just a normal, innocent woman who unfortunate shit was happening to her. Like, she was kind of unlucky in that way. So I was kind of glad that... It was sad that she had to watch it. Like, I didn't get to finish my birthday cake. I know that feeling. But I felt for her, and I'm glad that she got something at the end. Again, it was more so the people who got paid at the end were the ones who we've seen throughout the movie just paying their dues and, like, going through their regular routine work and just trying to, like, get by in life. So I like that they all, you know, got a reward at the end.
Absolutely, and that that's what made the Logans sort of be full fleshed out characters, because they didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
You know, they could have walked away and that could have been it, and you know, they could have screwed them over. But that humanity to be like, no, you unknowingly were part of the plan, so we're gonna reward you. So as we get into the production aspects of things, I thought I don't know if you actually stayed for this, but at the end of the movie, normally there's like a this is a work of fiction disclaimer. What they added was, nobody was robbed during the making of this movie except you.
We're like,
I don't know. So I'm wondering what they intended to mean by that.
I don't know. Maybe that was just a joke. No, I did not see that part. I didn't really expect that coming from a Soderbergh film, that there'd be, you know, end credits to that. I think that's funny, though. because it makes you think. Or like, were you really robbed? Is your bank account now empty? Who knows? That's funny.
I don't know. All right, so let's talk about Soderbergh. Obviously very interesting sort of history. Obviously we've been talking about the Ocean's movies, but even Aaron Brockovich, another Julia Roberts movie that he's worked with her on. Magic Mike. And you really like The Nick as well.
The Nick was great.
The TV show.
Yeah, that was fantastic. That was well edited, well acted, well shot, because that show was like there was a lot of the cinematography on it was like so well done. I'd give them an Oscar, not an Emmy, for cinematography. But that's Soderbergh. He has that visual eye of how to capture scenes, and you could pause a movie or like anywhere in his movie and you could take a picture. It's just so well framed for everything. But that's the visual creativeness that he has. And there are some directors that are like that.
Well, that's what he was getting a little, like, in terms of wanting to take a hiatus. He was getting burnt out from that show because, it really rested on his shoulders. And it's one thing to do a movie, but that was 10 episodes a season?
Yeah.
That's like an hour's worth because it's on it's on a premium cable network.
It's Showtime.
Yeah, so therefore, when you shoot an hour, you're making an hour. It's not like most of the cable networks where it's like ends up being like 40, 42 minutes. You're making an hour. So, and over the course of 10, so that's that adds up.
He did 20 episodes, and television production is usually more of a marathon than a movie. Movie's done within a few months. Television is like you go all year, or you go longer, and your production days are longer, and turnaround is faster. So you just got to keep going. I appreciate Soderbergh in that sense that because he is so visually stylistic, he can wear multiple hats and knock out episodes after one another because he just has the workflow of so many different people that he can get it done faster.
Absolutely. And and I think that he's great. I mean, kind of like a Robert Rodriguez type of person where he does his own shooting, editing, oftentimes writing as well. And it just has his own style and isn't afraid to go for it, which is so rare. Like, granted, it's partly just a logistical nightmare to have to do all of those things. It's quite daunting. I've made very crappy short films. I've not made my own feature film, and it's just a grueling process.
It is.
So the fact that he's been successful at it as an auteur over so many years really speaks volumes. It really does.
Yeah, and I like the visual aspect of him. He has that a certain look, a signature look. All of his shows and movies, they kind of have this orange, yellowish, warm tint to it. And I enjoyed that because it kind of plays along with, like, is it dramatic? Is it comedy? There's just like a subtle yellow to all of his films, which I enjoy.
And this had kind of, I would say, a similar style as well. We got the dirt, but then everyone's clothes, and I love like we're wearing camo pants and whatnot. It was very, very distinguished in terms of both look and also costuming and everything of that nature.
Yeah, the Nick was all browns and yellow and orange. So.
Yeah, which I didn't see too much of that, but that was what a lot of just the operating room. And unlike the ER, this was like early century.
This is the streets of New York back in like 1900.
Yeah. So obviously a much different hospital than we would normally get today.
But he has this individual look to his films.
Overall, this movie took about 35 days to shoot, which relatively fast if you kind of look at it, especially like the big things.
That's really sorry. That's really fast considering all the locations that they were in. To think they only filmed that within a month is mind blowing.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest things, like we talked about this with Draft Day, where like they got the NFL involved on that, and that ended up really enriching that movie, because I don't think a movie like that wouldn't have worked without the NFL's involvement. Well, a movie like this, without getting NASCAR really on board, certainly I don't think would have played, as well. Luckily, NASCAR did get on board, and I'll read the quote. We worked very hard to get NASCAR on board as a partner because we really felt that it was crucial. Because if you couldn't shoot at the real race and put your people there, then it wouldn't be compelling. Luckily, we started conversations with them very early. The script came to me while we were shooting Magic Mike XXL, so that would have been in the fall of 2014, and we immediately started conversations with NASCAR to get their assistance. If we weren't able to do what we did, I don't think we would have made the movie. It's such a unique event that I don't know what solve we would have come up with. Now, in terms of the actual day, he said we had no problems. It was really well organized. NASCAR took really great care of us. I think everybody did everything we needed, and we didn't get in anybody's way. It couldn't have gone any better. It was exciting. That event was pretty crazy. The scale of it was massive, and on that day we had 5 cameras running around, but it was all plotted out. Everybody knew where they were going, where they had to go, and so forth. So, in that respect, like you kind of really, I'm excited to see kind of the behind-the-scenes features.
Right.
But in essence, like, it's already grueling enough to make a movie, but when you're based around like somebody else's schedule, somebody else's event, you can't really get in their way. You just have to make do with what you got, and if you miss it, you missed it.
Right. And when you have the full support of the person or the place, venue where you're shooting, that makes it all the more authentic. And I like that NASA was so that NASCAR was so on board. But I was actually going to bring up that we've covered other movies here. A lot of the space films. This is where NASA was in my head, like The Martian. Life recently, NASA even gets on board, and even Hidden Figures. This isn't the first time where an organization or establishment has actually helped with the authenticity of its story, and it definitely worked for this.
And by the way, I'm glad that they did, because it's not like with a movie like this, it's fun and whatnot, but it's not like placing it's not a NASCAR movie. I'll just put it that way. B, it's not like it puts NASCAR in a bad light by any means. No. But it's a heist movie telling people how to basically rob NASCAR. Mm-hmm. And so you could be like,
we love NASCAR.
Yeah, so you could be like, hey guys, like if you guys were making a NASCAR movie, maybe we'd do it, because Draft Day is obviously all about the love of the NFL and the process in Draft Day. This is not, as I said, not a NASCAR movie. So I don't want that to be lost, how amazing it is to just get them to sign off.
Right. I think that's great, and I love it. It did show, even the monetary system of how they push their money. I enjoy that, because it really did feel like, if you're just a regular customer, or whoever going through NASCAR, like, you wouldn't think of, where did they store all the money? All those outsider things, or more so insider information that I like that NASCAR could provide for them. There was another film that I was thinking of, National Treasure, when they stole the Declaration of Independence. I think that's another film that actually will explain how you properly steal the Declaration of Independence. So.
There you go.
It works. Sometimes it works.
We'll categorize these movies under how-tos.
How-tos. Yeah.
All right. So, I wasn't able to pull a lot of information in terms of the editing or things of that nature, just because it all just fell on Soderbergh, right? And so whenever he gets interviewed, obviously, he's getting interviewed about the story and things of that nature. Not to say that the editing isn't crucial to it, but he's just wearing so many damn hats, he can only ask so many questions.
Right, and I think the editing played well in this film, because editing always tells the story, and to go off of his lines, we'll let them know only what they think they know. And that's where the editing came play. They used certain shots to show only certain angles of what some characters were actually doing, and then when, again, this is why I say it has all the same beats as Ocean 11, the whole reveal of how they got away with it, going back to the exact same scenes but showing different angles of like, oh, when she walked away in this direction, this person actually came in right after her. Like you saw, going back to the same scenes, and the more extension of the edits really helped reveal the heist.
And it's really a fine art that he's been able to finesse, because it can feel manipulative. And we've talked about other movies. I'm drawing a blank in terms of being able to reference one in particular, where it's like, okay, you're just withholding information from the audience, and it's not organic. It's done very purposefully, but not in a good spirit. And so with this, I thought it worked really well.
Yeah, I think another film that I mentioned earlier, Contraband, does the same thing with Mark Wahlberg, where they help steal some drugs to some traffic, but they showed at the end how they revealed and how they got, because in this film they got the money in trash bags. You think it went in one location, but it actually went somewhere else. Contraband does the same thing. Like, hey, you think we put it here, but we're actually buried it here in the water, and it's going to float up to us later on, so spoiler for that film. But again, it's showing like misdirecting someone to
those things.
To a place.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about, as I mentioned at the top, the distribution of this is a whole topic of itself. So we're going to dive into that. But
Yes.
a couple of things before we dive into it. I want to ask you guys, listening, watching, whatever it may be, let us know, it could be top 5 or let's say top 10. Maybe just top 5. If you really can't hone it down to top 5, give us the top 10 heist movies you love, whether it's Bank Job, whether it's Baby Driver, technically, whether it's The Usual Suspects, whatever you want. Let us know what your top movies are. Be curious to know. And of course, as always, comment, let us know what you thought of the movie, anything that we didn't discuss that you guys want to discuss further. We're happy to do so in the various comment sections or via our social media, which is at Serafini TV.
That's right. At
PD Svitek. So definitely continue the conversation there. But let's now shift gears, and let's talk about the. This was a vehicle where he really went against the studio system. Much like music, in a sense, is going where they're getting rid of these labels and putting money more directly into the hands of the creators. Soderbergh was kind of really seeking this. And the interesting part is Dan Feldman, who ran Warner Brothers for some time, he actually is credited as an executive producer, so he was able to sort of help with the distribution for this. So I thought it was very interesting, but I'll let you kind of continue it as well.
Yeah, so Soderbergh started a domestic distribution company called Fingerprint Releasing, and they actually partnered up with Amazon Prime to look for a wide release. So Logan Lucky is the first, and he's teaming up with Bleecker Street, which is a small distribution company. They recently just did Megan Levy, which I still love that movie, and you have to watch it.
Check out our anatomy for it too.
Yes, go check out Megan Levy. So they're a smaller distribution, but they have more movies coming to them that they're slowly getting bigger, and it is set to release on August 18th. So right now, I mean, this film was released in 3,000 theaters, so it wasn't directly to an actual studio. They worked with smaller distribution companies to get it full released. And
in today's day and age, because theaters are all digital, all you really have to do is just basically send out a file.
Yeah.
In essence, so
put it on hard drives. That's where the hard drives and advertisements come in.
Yeah. So. Because in the old days you had to make film prints, and those weren't fun days. But everything's now digital, which is great. All in all, it might sound like a lot, but they only spent about $20 million on marketing and everything else, which, in the grand scheme of things, sounds like a lot, but it's actually not.
No, it's not. And I wasn't hit over the head with trailers and advertisements for this film. The only time I really saw this film promoted was in the theaters, so I only just saw the trailers. That was it.
So,
the promotion was sparing.
Now, so it's kind of, I'll give a couple of quotes from Soderbergh himself. By all standards, this is a studio movie. It's a very commercial movie with movie stars, and it's going out to about 3,000 screens. The question is, can you do what the studios normally do from a distribution standpoint with a lot less resources and with a much better economic structure for the people who made the film? That's what he's aiming to do. My feeling is that it's gotten way too expensive to release a film wide. And the way that the economic structure of a studio is set up, if you've done what you've done on this movie, which is everybody's work for scale, you're far too away from the money. There's one component that hasn't been done. When he talks about this, in terms of his model, all of these are components that have been done before. But as he says, there's no component that hasn't been done before. But I think it's a combination of elements that he's doing, right? Mm-hmm. So there have been advancements in technology that make it a lot easier. The economic model is pretty simple. You sell the foreign rights to cover the cost of the film. Negative, which is something that Valerian did as well. And so, he's kind of utilizing that. Now, granted, whether it's Valerian or this movie, not really hitting the box office in the way that it was intended.
Yeah.
Which is a shame.
I still haven't seen that one. But, yeah, I completely agree. If instead of going to, one big distribution company, he went to smaller ones that helped still get the same amount of theaters that he wanted, that you could have gone from just one person. I think that's smart, though. And if that's economically efficient, if that's what he was going for, he pulled it off.
He did, but, in terms of the return on everything, it's just, as of right now, it's made about $10 million. Opening weekend came in third, which is abysmal if you really look at it. It only made $7.6 million. So the fact that it was third, and that's the number that we came in at third. Yeah,
it's really low considering the talent that he has in this film. Daniel Craig, Hilary Swank, you have Adam Driver, and Channing Tatum. They all have big audience in their own right, and in different demographics and different genres. And it's unfortunate that this film isn't reflecting the type of audience that this film could actually bring in.
Yeah. It has a B on Cinema Score and a 93 on Rotten Tomatoes, and I'm curious, what is the disconnect? Why a B? I really don't get it.
B's
fine.
Low.
B, give it a B plus. If you give it a B plus, I'd still be upset, but okay, maybe. I think it's more like an A minus in terms of what it should have been. I really think it's a fantastic movie, and I just don't understand why audiences have it lower than critics.
Yeah, I don't get that either. And this is a film and we've talked about films where they try doing too much and it gets all too convoluted. Atomic Blonde. And then but this film had a lot going on, but not once did I not understand what was happening. I always could follow the story with whatever character, whatever they were doing. I always understood what part of the plan they were at. And I feel like it did a great job of straightlining that and actually making it concise and clear for us to understand. So it's unfortunate. I don't know what was wrong with the story, or if it wasn't the story that was disconnecting with the critics.
Well, not the critic. The critics were loving it. The fans. So
fans, fine. Fans.
I'm very curious. You guys are fans. You at home. Let us know. Did you love it? Did you not? I would like to know the answer. And don't just give us a good answer. If you didn't like it, fine. That's okay. But I'm curious as to why. Really why. Because, Marissa and I have been talking, and we've stated our reasons why we do like it.
Yeah.
So.
And I think, if it's coming from the fans' perspectives, fans usually pull from stuff that they know. Shoot, I've dropped Ocean's movies how many times in this dissection? if it comes from a fan's perspective, unfortunately, they're gonna compare it to a lot of other heist movies that maybe they thought was better. So maybe that's.
I don't know. I would say yes, it has those tropes, especially because it's the same director. But nonetheless, it's still different and fun. So, anyway, any final thoughts before we wrap up today's dissection?
I probably would see a sequel if they made it. I hope they don't, because I don't think this film needs a sequel. It doesn't boast a sequel. Hopefully this gets better word of mouth. I think that's the only thing that can really help it now.
Here's what I'm going to do to help this movie. Anthony, for those of you guys who are longtime listeners or viewers, Anthony is our engineer in the booth. Sometimes he chimes in. I'm kidnapping him this weekend, and I'm going to make him go see this movie with me. So, A, they're getting my money's worth the second time. B, I'm bringing somebody else.
There you go. Bring more people to go see it.
I'm so down. I want to watch this movie.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, speaking of which, why don't you play some John Denver for me? That'll get me in the mood to really wrap this up. Thank you.
And if they do a sequel, Bleecker Street actually has the rights to distribute the second
As
one.
they should.
They should. Bleecker Street's great. I've seen their last 5 films, and I approve of every single one of them.
They're doing good.
Yeah.
Speaking of doing good, I think we did good. At Serafini TV.
That's right.
That's where you can follow Marisa Serafini. For Dimitri, even though he wasn't here today, he loved the movie as well. At DMovies 1701 for him. At PD Svitek, or just go to philsvitek.com. Of course, check out all of our other Popcorn Talk shows here. We've got a plethora of them to satiate your movie appetite. And even just on our Anatomy of a Movie, we have so many dissections that we've done over the years, so definitely check that out. I believe we did Behind the Gamble Opera.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, we did not.
But we did Megan Levy.
We didn't. That's not a Steven Soderbergh movie, but
No, it's not.
it's a Bleecker Street
But
movie.
but I covered the Nick on our sister network, the AfterBuzz TV. Go check out the Nick After Show.
That's right. Check that out. Thank you guys as always. We've got next week, because the lineup of movies is a little bit slow in August, we're going to actually return to Close Encounters of the Third Kind, because it's being re-released in movie theaters, so we thought that would be fun to do. And down the line,
Yes.
or retro. Down the line, we've got It. Down the line, we've got plenty of
Mother.
the new Darren Aronofsky movie. So lots to look forward to. Lots in the rear mirror. But we're going to take you home now. Or, well, you're going to drive yourself home. But we're going to go home. See ya next time.
Producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.